Is Connor Bedard emerging as a National Hockey League superstar? He certainly showed that skill with his hat-trick performance in a win against the Ottawa Senators, which we'll be breaking down here on today's show.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we'll be breaking down the Chicago Blackhawks, who are taking some big steps in their development as a team, and especially also as individuals, with the young studs really starting to take the reins of this organization and secure wins almost single-handedly, as Connor Bedard showed in his best game of the season so far in a 7-3 victory over the Ottawa Senators, scoring a hat trick, adding an assist, and saving a goal against Tim Stützle in the late second period. He did it all in this game. So we'll be discussing Bedard in the first segment, then we'll be talking about guys like Frank Nazar and Spencer Knight, who are emerging as franchise cornerstones in the second. And finally, we'll wrap it up with a trio of young guns in the NHL lineup with, of course, Sam Rinzel, Artyom Levshunov, and Ryan Greene, who had himself a good game playing as a top line checker on Bedard's wing here against the Sens. So before we dive into the entire episode here, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, Connor Bedard, Blackhawks fans, you've endured a couple seasons now of seeing fans from around the league asking, is this guy really the superstar that everyone said he was going to be in his draft year campaign? And yeah, there have been some growing pains in his development, some defensive issues, and overall the production just hasn't been the like franchise caliber that perhaps some people were expecting it to be out of the gate. But this season so far, he's up to 6 goals and 12 points in 10 games, and 3 of those goals and 4 of those points came just in this one night against the Sens. Really excellent performance from Bedard and the entire Blackhawks lineup. It was a real good team win overall. The second period definitely saw some growing pains as well. I mean, going into that with a 4-0 lead and just scraping out of it with a 4-3 advantage. That's definitely growing pains, but I think it shows a lot of character for this team to then grind out a victory in the third period and end up winning with a very comfortable 7-3 margin, including an empty net goal from Frank Nazar, really showing his breakaway speed. And Bedard was phenomenal in this game, truly the best player on the ice, the player that was able to create something out of nothing and was showing some of the Connor McDavid-esque skill in terms of just taking on the entire opposing defensive core, all 5 players, especially on that second goal. Just really impressive stuff. Like, his first goal came off of a beautiful shot on the power play, beating Linus Ullmark short side over the shoulder. There's only the tiniest of openings between shoulder, helmet, post, and crossbar, and Bedard just sniped that little rectangle. And the shot is just such an elite quality with this player, and he's really showing the damage that he can do with it so far this season. And the second goal was even more impressive almost, because it wasn't just a shot. It was an entire solo rush, and he had multiple options. He could have slowed down, kind of played link-up play with his line mates, which is kind of what coaches would recommend players to do, and he could have also gone for more of a dump and chase, and no, instead he just attacked full speed up the jugular down the middle lane, took on all 5 Ottawa Senators skaters on the ice. If you look at a freeze frame from when he releases the puck, he's literally just surrounded like a prayer circle by all 5 Senators on the ice, and just beautiful little curl and drag to get it around the stick of Artem Zub, and then fire the puck through his legs and up over the pad of Linus Ullmark. Very pretty goal. really showing his combination of speed, handling, and shooting ability, and how he's able to blend all those things together at high pace with real fluidity. And that's something that makes this player so special, and why he was just so clearly the first overall pick in that 2023 NHL draft. And then came the third goal in the third period, which was another very nice finish, really showing off that shot directly off a faceoff and just like hammering the puck within a second of the draw being won, and then beating Ullmark once again. But what I really wanted to highlight here was actually the defensive play that Bedard made at the end of the second period. This was the play, in my opinion, that shifted the momentum of the game back in Chicago's favor. They had a 4-0 lead at one point there in the second period, and then they conceded one goal to Nick Cousins, then another one to Michael Amadio on a really nice like roofed shot from in tight, and then Tim Stützle with a goal that was very close to being offside, and if not, maybe potentially was offside. I know it was ruled onside, but it was right on the edge. And then right at the tail end of the second period, Tim Stützle, basically in alone on a half break, cuts across the face of the goal to try to get the tying goal, which would have certainly gone a long way to demoralize the Blackhawks and really add some steam to the Senators in that comeback. I mean, coming back from a 4-goal deficit is nothing to scoff at. And yet, the last player that could possibly have done anything to stop this goal after Stützle cut back across the net and had a pretty wide open cage to shoot from, it was Connor Bedard with an active stick on the back check, got his stick and just disrupted Stützle just enough that the puck bobbled into the corner rather than onto Stützle's stick for an easy goal. And that was a massive defensive play. And these are the things that you need from Connor Bedard. He has to be a difference maker everywhere on the ice, not just as a finisher, not a pure sniper, not just a puck-carrying demon in transition. You need him to pop up defensively. He has the skating, he has the intelligence to really make a difference, especially on sequences like this, where there's a fast break going against Chicago, and you need somebody to make up some ground and be just there at the right place at the right time to make the final little play. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be pretty, but just enough to stop a chance. And that's exactly what Bedard did here. And that was before his third goal, but I think that was his most important play of the night, despite scoring a hat trick. And he even added an extra assist in the third period after he scored his third goal. On that Ryan Donato tally. And overall, just an incredibly involved performance from Bedard. And it has you asking the question, is he going to take that step to superstar level talent here this season? And I think a lot's going to come down to how the Blackhawks play as a whole, as a unit. And I think a lot of it as well going to come down to that chemistry building between Bedard and Frank Nazar, especially because if those two guys can keep being the go-to offensive pieces in Chicago, I wouldn't be betting against it. I think that these two guys with their elite level of speed, high-end handling skill, and both are just so adaptable and versatile in being high-end goal scorers and playmakers, constantly just keeping defenders guessing that, yeah, they're not the biggest guys on the ice. Their frames are I mean, sub 6 feet for both of them. And yet they're hardworking guys that get to the middle of the ice and are involved with their sticks on the defensive side of the puck. And I think that that's just a gorgeous combination to work from for years and years to come now. And yeah, Bedard is a fantastic piece for the Blackhawks. So I'll pass the question on to you. Is Connor Bedard going to come up as a superstar this season? I would say that in my personal estimation, I would put the odds at 65% that he, by year's end, is mostly regarded as a superstar in the National Hockey League. I think this might be the year that he finally takes that step. I mean, of course, last year of his entry-level contract here with the Blackhawks would be a really nice time to really take that step to like true star level player in this league in a contract year. He hasn't signed that extension just yet, so every goal he scores right now is going to add some money to each of those years of his next contract, and would not be shocked at all to see him locked up for 8 years in and around the I don't know, $11 million range, especially now after Thomas Harley signed at what, 10.5 something million dollars. I could see Bedard earning anywhere between 10.5 and 12 mil a year, especially on the Blackhawks team that has so much cap space to work from in years to come. I think Bedard is the player to build around, and I would cash in for as long of a contract as possible at this stage, because I think the longer you wait to sign this contract, the more expensive it's going to get, and I would cash in as soon as possible if I were Kyle Davidson and co. But that wraps up this first segment. In the next one, we'll be talking about Frank Nazar and Spencer Knight, who are really emerging as key components of this rebuild and of things to come for the Chicago Blackhawks. But before we do that, we've got a quick message from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those early season games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be such a massive headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and getting prices that jump right before checkout, it's so easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. And that's where Gametime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack to scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. Their zone deals are an absolute game changer. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seat, and you save massive bucks. You can even find NHL tickets for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right, let's keep this show rolling, breaking down the season so far of the Chicago Blackhawks, who have gotten off to a surprisingly decent start here. They find themselves in the middle pack of the Central Division. They're over 500 now after this win against Ottawa with 12 points through 10 games. They've won 5 of those, only lost 3 in regulation, and added 2 overtime defeats to the mix. And they have a positive goal difference. When's the last time we've seen this? The Blackhawks with a positive goal difference, +7 here on the season so far, and really competing with teams like the Dallas Stars, like the Edmonton Oilers, the Anaheim Ducks, and LA Kings, and kind of that early season wild cards race in the Western Conference. And yeah, I'm very excited to see kind of how this season keeps progressing for the Blackhawks, because in terms of assets in their organization, they've basically completed their rebuild. They have just about every piece that you need to kind of take the leap from rebuilding to working your way up to contention. And I'm so happy to see them taking these steps here this campaign, led by guys like Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar, who we did talk about here very recently on the show, and has really just been emerging as a star component of this roster. Had another 2-point night here against the Ottawa Senators, including the empty net goal where he showed massive amounts of breakaway speed, going from the defensive zone and beating an Ottawa defender with better positioning to the loose puck, and getting tripped up, getting right back on his feet, and potting that goal to ice the game. And he's now up to 11 points and 5 goals on the season through 10 games played. That is fantastic top-line production. Nazar's playing top-line level minutes. He's getting top-line level results. There's not really much more you could hope for from a player that you drafted 13th overall just a couple seasons ago, and who also suffered a massive injury in his D+1 campaign, barely playing that season, only 13 games with the University of Michigan that campaign. But ever since then, year after year after year, it's been massive strides taken by Nazar, and he is one of the most important pieces of this team now, and really showing why he was my second-ranked player there back in 2022. And he's not the only guy that's shown in this game. I'll get to Spencer Knight in a second, but I want to give a quick shout out to Ryan Greene of course, the Chicago Blackhawks, a 22-year-old right shot forward, can play at center, can play in the wing, a very versatile forward who's a St. John's, Newfoundland-born player, just as I am, not player, but born in St. John's. And he's been really solid so far this season after captaining Boston University last campaign in his final year of college hockey, where I was almost a point-a-game player with 38 points in 40 games so far this season. 10 games played, 1 goal, 1 assist for 2 points, largely playing, I don't know, between 10 and 12 minutes a night. But in this game against the Sens, he eclipsed the 15-minute mark for just the second time this season, got his second point on the year, and was playing on Connor Bedard's wing as just an energetic checking guy. He brings physicality. He brings a lot of the checking details that coaches look for, and made a lot of space for Connor Bedard. He didn't do his best work on puck. He's really his off puck routes, dragging defenders with him, creating an extra second of time, an inch of space for Bedard to use his release and really punish the Senators for all the time and space that he got. But Greene was unheralded, I think, in the role that he played in supporting Bedard in this game, and a player I've always loved watching. I think definitely like bottom six guy in terms of projection long term, right? Like he's a checker, works hard, can kind of play up and down the lineup, be a PK presence when you need him to be. But that versatility is something that, especially at this point in the rebuild, you need some of your young players to be just reliable defensive presences who play physically and make the lives of your high-skilled guys so much easier. But to wrap up this second segment, let's highlight Spencer Knight, who's gotten off to a fantastic start to the season in his first full year with the Chicago Blackhawks. The 24-year-old 6'3" netminder is up to a .930 save percentage here on the season, has a 4-2-1 record through 7 games played. Really clearly the starting netminder here in Chicago to start the campaign. And he only faced 24 shots in this game. He let in 3 goals, so had an .875 save percentage in this particular game. But I thought that he came up big on multiple occasions against the Senators, especially there in the third period. And a player that just plays with so much fluidity and athleticism from the crease. Like, he's got a really big frame, obviously. He takes up so much space in the net. But it's the quick post-to-post movements, the agility and fluidity with which he gets down into the butterfly, back up onto his feet, a very comfortable moving around his space in the net. And I think overall, he's got the toolkit to be the starting netminder for this organization for years and years to come. And he's only getting better. And really great return, I think, from that Seth Jones deal, sending Jones to the Florida Panthers. And I think that the Blackhawks had the right strategy with that trade to secure a piece that they just didn't have in the organization, which was a slam dunk, long-term starting option. And Spencer Knight is just that. And he's showing so far this season that he can win games for this team. I mean, against the Tampa Bay Lightning, a 3-2 victory. He made 29 saves on 31 shots. The night before that, a 2-1 overtime win against the Anaheim Ducks. He put up 38 saves on 39 shots to win that game. Also had a 21 save night with just 1 goal against Utah earlier in the season in a 3-1 victory. These are some good teams that he's beating, and he's playing a really big role for this team. And it's great to see that he's really kind of arriving and settling in to the crease here with the Blackhawks after kind of an up and down start to his career with the Florida Panthers, often juggling between the AHL with the Charlotte Checkers and the Florida Panthers. But now he's finding that consistency, getting starting goaltending minutes, not stressing about a single mistake, landing him on the bench for an extended period of time. And I think that's a really important thing for the mental side of the game, which is, of course, a massive component of goaltending. But that wraps up this second segment here for us. In the final one, we'll be talking about a pair of right shot defensemen, as well as a really fun younger brother in Colton Dach, who also scored himself a goal in this win over the Ottawa Senators. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here, Locked On NHL Prospects. All right, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment, talking about the Chicago Blackhawks and the strides that they have taken in their development as a rebuilding organization. And let's kick things off with Colton Dach, who scored the opening goal in this game against the Senators. Nice heads-up play, just roving to the back post, and a shot was just stopped by Omar, kicked out into open ice, and Dach had a pretty decent amount of space to aim for in the net to put away the goal. So he got his first of the season there. He's up to 3 points in 10 games so far this year. He played 17 minutes, a new high on the season in this game, and really showing his combination of physicality and motor and two-way buy-in. The shots are really good quality. Of course, the size at 6'4", 196 pounds. He's a more physically involved player than his older brother Kirby. And overall, I think that Colton's going to be a stalwart for the Chicago Blackhawks long-term in a third-line capacity, most likely. There's a lot of talent still coming through the wings while you're talking about guys like Oliver Moore, like potentially Nick Lardis as well, both of whom are just lighting it up in Rockford at the moment. We'll talk about those two some other time. But overall, I think that Colton Dach is really surprising some people with just how comfortable he looks in the National Hockey League here this season, just as he did towards the tail end of last year. And nice to see him winning more and more minutes for himself here as the year's progressing. And would love to see him really staying in this kind of top 9 role here for the rest of the campaign. But let's shift our attention over to the defensive side of the puck, as we have a pair of big right shot blue liners to highlight. And we'll kick things off with Artyom Levshunov, the 2nd overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft. I know it's a selection that Blackhawks fans are still frustrated about because Ivan Demidov was available, who's gotten off to a pretty hot start to a career in Montreal. But Levshunov is a really talented player and still quite raw. He still has a lot of room to grow. This is not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. And he brings so much to the table that I think is quite clear every single time I tune in to watch him play. There's definitely still some growing pains in terms of the decision-making side of the game, especially at higher paces. But this guy is such an aggressive player, has elite level mobility, the fluidity with which he moves around the ice, the physicality with which he's engaged at 6'2", 209 pounds. He's got that big frame, and I think he's only going to become stronger in years to come. And we've seen some flashes of that offensive skill with Levshunov, but he's been certainly limited to more depth minutes here so far this season, playing mostly around the 13-minute range here, especially since the first 3 games of the year where he was getting more second pairing minutes. Since then, it's been sheltered third pairing deployment for Levshunov. But I think that that's kind of also a place that he can grow his game. We saw last season with the Rockford Ice Hogs that he can dominate in that league, especially like later on in his stint in the AHL, and he might still get sent down again here this season. I think that could do him some good to gain some confidence back and build up his offensive game, because there is so much skill that he has in the offensive zone, whether it be the aggressive playmaking, the heavy shot from the point, the quick puck movement he's able to play with. And there's so much talent on Rockford this season with guys like Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis, and the list just simply goes on and on and on. I think that could be a nice environment for Levshunov to keep growing in. So I'd love to hear from you Blackhawks fans down below. Do you want to see him stay in the NHL lineup? Do you want to see him get more minutes than he's gotten so far? Or is that third pairing role perfect? Or would you prefer to see him sent back down to the AHL for a little bit more refinement here this campaign? I'd love to hear your insights as well, because I think that, this player's development is so important for your organization. A 2nd overall selection, one of your top right shot defense prospects. You need this guy to hit. And so far, it's been a slower start to his NHL career than the other guys selected at the top end of that draft. But that's not to say that we're at any point now to make conclusions on this player, his upside, or where he should have gone on draft day, even if it's clear that Demidov is a top 2 player from that class alongside Macklin Celebrini. I think that was very clear to me on draft day. I had those 2 guys as like leagues above the rest of the class for the entire year. Demidov was always closer to Celebrini than he was to 3rd overall for me the entire season, going back to the summer before he was drafted. And I think that just stays the case now, that those are the quite clearly the best two players from that 2024 class. But I still think that Levshunov is one of the highest upside blue liners from this draft class. And one of the big things with him was always going to be that he needed some development time. I think that Chicago rushed him a little bit to pro hockey. I would have given him at least one more season at Michigan State University, a great program there in college hockey. And he produced fantastically in his one season there, with 35 points in 38 games. But I really do think that he would have benefited from more time there to refine the defensive reads, maybe restrain his chaos a little bit, become a little bit more opportunistic with when he takes his risks. That could have served him well, but you can't make that change now. He's in the pro ranks, and I think that personally I would consider sending him back down to Rockford for some more refinement. But let's cap off the show with the right shot defenseman around the same age who is not having those growing pains, and that is Sam Rinzel, the big 6'4", 190-pound right shot blue liner who skates with just so much fluidity. Beautiful player to watch move around the ice. And he played 16 minutes in this game against the Ottawa Senators, was a little bit more subtle in his on-puck implications than previous games I tuned into this season. But he did get 6 penalty minutes, so definitely found his way into the box in this game. But overall, I think that with Sam Rinzel, the Hawks have another guy with just very, very clear top four upside. He's already, I think, a top four caliber player in the National Hockey League as a solid second pairing puck moving defenseman that uses his range really nicely to break up plays on the defensive side of the puck, and uses that mobility and heavy shot and slick handling ability to really create space and opportunities for his teammates in the offensive zone. Maybe would like to see him get more time on ice on the power play as well. I think that could be a whole bunch of fun to see a bit more of. But overall, he looks like a full-blown NHLer, and not the growing pains here with Rinzel that we see with Levshunov. So Blackhawks fans, what are your early takeaways of your big blue line prospects here down the right side? What are your expectations for them this season? And how do you think your blue line will shape up in 3 or 4 years' time? What will that depth chart be looking like? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. It's always greatly appreciated. And for your second listen, you can head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything you need to know to build yourself a competitive and sustainable fantasy roster. That is it from me today. I'm Sebastian Hyde, the USA Scout at Elite Prospects, and I'll catch you tuning in again very, very soon.